Hi, I am Sarah Kinkle. I am the Deputy Dean in the Graduate Research School. Welcome to UTS Startups Confessions. I think one of the things about entrepreneurship, and sometimes research as well, is that you see these really shiny finished products and you see the successes and you're not always completely sure what it took to get there. So what we do here at UTS Startups Confessions is actually unpack what that journey looks like so that we can all share in that collective knowledge and understanding and feel more empowered to follow it ourselves. So I have with me today UTS PhD student and entrepreneur Payar who's going to be talking to us about his startup Smart MCs. I also want to give a shout out in the back to Raisa, who is our Tech Central embedded artist. She is capturing impressionist art behind me about Smart MCs and about the experience of what we're doing here today. So this is all very cool. So we're going to take a couple of minutes. We're going to talk a little bit about your journey, about what's brought you here, about what you guys are doing, where you want to go, and then we are going to get to the really juicy part where we turn off the cameras and we get to have a conversation here. You guys at home are missing out on that. So talk to me quickly, 10 seconds. What is Smart MCs?
Right. Hello, first of all, and thanks for having me. So in 10 seconds, effectively, whenever you want to grow animal or human cells in the laboratory outside the body of human or the animal, you can use Smart MCs technology, which is called microcarrier, to scale up the production.
Okay. So that sounds complex. Is it? Who were you before? What brought you to this? Who were you before you were a co-founder and a CEO?
Yeah, so I was a curious mechanical engineer who I think I was at the time 22 years old. I was interested about life sciences and biotechnology in general, and was hoping to jump on a PhD journey to find out how we can translate that engineering world all the way to the biotech industry or the biology world itself. So I was always curious, of course, about entrepreneurship and making products, solving problems every day, as any engineer is really doing every day. So that's what I was before.
Okay, so what are your first memories of Smart MCs as an idea?
Right, first memories goes back to, I think, 2021, July. I think we were kind of, that was the time I was at the peak of the PhD program. I was doing something completely different on cancer-related research, and this was a little side fun project where we thought, what if we can do, effectively, the device we were making the job was to make blood into little tiny partitions, you can call it. And we were like, what if we could make something, in blood case, in cancer case, you're doing a limited number of them, very tiny amount, as there is only one cancer cell, for example, per billion or trillion cells in the body. And what we were kind of doing back then was, what if we can make a lot of these partitions, just for fun, at the beginning. And then it came out with the idea, what if you can make this out of some biomaterials or even edible materials that you have on your cooking or desserts, any pretty much sort of type of different gums and so forth. And we had a collaborator who was interested in the lab-grown meat space and told us that, oh, if you could make some, a lot of these little spheres, I'm talking about micrometer level, from food ingredients. You can make these little spheres that cells can attach to and grow in the lab. We can make lab-grown meat out of them. We were like, well, we have a device that can do that. It was made originally for fun, but I'm not sure if it will do the job. So we gave it a go. It was just a fun project, and everything kind of kick-started. And that was the core part of the technology where it got developed, and we were like, oh, how can we improve this production? How can we make more of these little spheres and from easy to use materials that is used already in the food space? And then we kind of looked into, okay, what if we wanted to take this into the market? What it takes to become kind of that, to start that startup around it? And we went through courses at Cicada, like the problem discovery course, which was a huge thing. Of course, a lot of good advisors and mentors I had personally who influenced the decision. And yeah, so I took the bullet.
So you started with cancer diagnostic research, and now this is about supporting lab-grown meat. That feels like a leap.
It does.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So what were the critical recipes for what would you say were the ingredients that have sort of helped bring Smart MCs together? I know you sort of highlighted a couple of them, that you had some support from Cicada, again, had some advice here. What else has been really critical in making that transition feasible?
I think there's no one size fits all, of course, advice, but I think if it goes back to my case, I think it's purely like team building. And we are talking about like everyone who influenced us, right? We're talking about those pretty much co-founders that I have and other people in the business that help on the technical side of the story. From my supervisor and PhD who influenced it a lot, of course, mentoring, pushing on entrepreneurship, like seeding the idea, or planting that seed in the head, and all the way to those mentors who actually, in terms of like business side of the story, I don't want to name them, but really a lot of people were in the process who actually helped. So I think when you don't know your power, obviously, you don't know what you can do, you don't know the capacity of your technology, but some experts out there do know, and that team build-up, I think is the only job probably as a CEO or an entrepreneur you should do. And I think that's the one critical ingredient to success that caused this to happen. Because the rest of things can either be resolved to me or can be found out. But the build-up of the team and getting everyone to go towards one direction, I think is the huge thing.
I think that makes a lot of sense. It's one of the things that I sometimes find a little frustrating about some of the ways that I think we think about entrepreneurship, and specifically entrepreneurs, is thinking about them as being very much solo operators. And I am sure for some people that is true. I suspect for a lot of successful entrepreneurs and successful startups, you are looking at a team effort where you are actually, again, building together that collaborative network of skills and knowledges and capabilities, right? Much like, of course, we do in research often as well. So what... Tell me a little bit then about, okay, so that's the idea, that's how it started to come together, had these external networks for support, had some support here, got the right team. What did the next steps look like from there in terms of sort of what have your ingredients for growth been? And tell me a little bit about your first customers.
Yeah, so I think it started pretty much after having that team together, and we actually decided, okay, I think we want to do this. There was a huge effort on the market validation. We want to know that there is actually a market out there, and that's, I guess, the most difficult part, because when you go out there, you start talking to people. It's first of all really hard to find people and talk to them, especially in the scientific community. You're talking about top scientists in the world who don't want to talk to you probably as a random person. But when you talk to them, you realize, okay, your idea is wrong, what you're thinking is wrong. And it's just a matter of iterative process every day that keeps changing and changing until eventually it gets some shape of your first maybe MVP or the minimum viable product. And then I think that was the next thing. Of course, then once the market was kind of validated, and again, it's hard to validate it itself in biotech particularly, or in a more complex market like lab-grown meat or microcarriers, particularly for different applications. So we took the next step. Of course, we needed fundraising, which went through a fun 3 months. So that was a bit of fun. After closing the round and doing a bit of sort of tuning of the product, that's when our first customer came through actually connections from one of our investors who are Bigger Ventures, which is one of the top food tech investors in the world. And so they have a lot of portfolio companies in cultured meat particularly who potentially would have been interested in our product. And that's how we got connected to the first one. So everything, or majority of our customers even today, we have around 20 customers now. All of them, like majority of them, are through word of mouth and introductions. I think that's like a huge piece in the process. So the first customer was kind of a very funny one. We were pretty much doing a lot of work together, like a lot of talks beforehand, and then suddenly rocked up from Singapore to Australia and said, I'm outside your office. And I'm like, well, came here for some other reason. But anyway, showed up, we went out, we had a few drinks and kind of discussed this through, and kind of the relationship was built. We started getting some really cool results out of those experiments, and I think it was a very good first moment of proof that your product is working in somebody else's hand, not your hand, because that's the biggest challenge in biotech or life sciences in most cases. Things work in your lab, doesn't work in the other lab. So that reproducibility and things started kind of from there. And that was the first customer, the story of it.
Okay, great. So how it started, how's it going? Tell me a little bit about where you are now. What does it look like today?
Yeah, so we are now 5-6 people kind of full-time in the team, and we have a few people sort of working with us part-time. Looking to grow, of course. Our main focus at the moment is to expand our sales so we can show that demand in the market. So everyone's effort is on that. A lot of biomaterial science optimization and work every day the team is doing. And yeah, so for the team is pretty much just now drive that customer, show that it works. It's a pretty complex and time-taking process as well. It's not as easy as selling, I don't know, maybe other products. Often it involves a lot of experiments on the customer's hand, which means time. Every step means time by the time they get back to you. So we have customers that took them, I don't know, 6 months to even get the first hand of result. We had customers that were very fast, a few weeks. So it's a nice spectrum of customers. So you got to just align yourself, make sure the technology can keep up with the demand that you're trying to create, of course.
Yeah. Now, I don't want to lead the witness, but I know that you guys have had some, fairly big successes here recently, and I'm sure there's a lot on the horizon. Tell me a little bit about where this is going, then. What do you want to see happen? Where are Smart MCs in the next 5 years?
Yeah, so we want to be an overall like a smart biomaterial company, catering for a lot of different applications. At the moment, our core focus is on vaccine production, lab-grown meat, and stem cell therapeutics. Or cellular therapeutics, let's say, in general. We can expand that a lot to tissue modeling applications and other kind of places where biomaterial plays a huge role. That's not the technical side, but there's huge, I guess, milestones to be achieved in between is to get certifications required, like standards that is needed to drive more customers in. And unless you have that, you cannot really walk into clinics and have real kind of patient therapy happening, for example. With food applications, I think it's slightly better. Food certifications in general are easy, and given the nature of our products, they're completely food grade, so there's not much worry about it, and we can do it. But when you talk about clinical use, then we're talking about a lot of certifications kind of needed.
Yeah. Fair enough. So this is something where, again, sort of to take us back to where we started, again, we sort of had started talking about cancer diagnostics. We moved into lab-grown meat, but you're talking about, again, potentially this is a technology that has a lot of applicability and can go in a lot of directions depending on what comes next. So what do you need to be able to get there?
So I think the first thing we need to achieve is the milestone is generating the sales we want to show that as a proof that that's good. Obviously, a lot of cases we have to have only research grade product, cannot be used in clinics in patients, for example. We can use that as a sort of a proof to go for further fundraising round, to get enough funds to build a facility that can cater those certifications that can be in clinics. Taking a bit. So a lot of steps. Those are the next on the horizon, I think. And unless we have those, pretty much if you have those, then a lot more demand we can create, and that's where the business can really exponentially grow.
Yep, that's really exciting. So one of the things, and I know this is a little bit of a pet topic for me, I think you've heard me talk about this before, but I'm hoping you're going to humor me again anyway. It always strikes me that there's actually a lot of areas of overlap between researchers and entrepreneurs in terms of sort of scoping out a problem and trying to understand what solutions already exist and where can you actually do something that's new and innovative and test your ideas and test your ideas and test your ideas and then come up with a solution that actually is really compelling. So I'm sort of going to frame this question two ways and I guess see where we go with it. So if you could go back to the younger version of you a couple of years ago, you're midway through your PhD, you've got this idea, maybe this is a technology that could be used in a variety of different kinds of ways. What advice would you give to yourself at that point? Now sort of knowing what these next steps look like and what really is possible with it, but also what advice would you give maybe to other sort of entrepreneurs who are in a similar space or to other researchers who might be in a similar space and want to take that really deep expert knowledge and see real world impact with it?
Right, so I think that's two questions, right?
It
so
is. It's a classic academic thing. Actually, it has a secret three-part question.
Or maybe more.
Maybe more.
It was, I think 4 or 5. So the first bit around what I would tell myself, a younger version of myself, it's very difficult to say because, hindsight 2020, so it's kind of like, now you know, otherwise you would have not done it. But I think with me particularly, I think the biggest thing for startups is, at least for our startup and how I've seen things so far, it's been the speed of execution. So I think that prioritizing the right task to speed that up is a key thing. We might for example, things in Australia might be slightly slower to elsewhere around the world, so that's something that we you have to be cautious. So it's the culture difference, so that speeding things up is a huge thing. Now, some tasks especially when it involves multiple parties or bodies, it might take long, but a matter of just executing them. Doesn't need to be 100 out of 100, can be a 50 out of 100, but the more things get done, I think, and at least in our case, would have been kind of better. So that's kind of the little maybe advice I will give myself going back. And for overlaps between entrepreneurship and research, or the higher degree research, as of most interest here, is effectively, I think, somewhat to me, a lot of times, or most of the times maybe, they're actually the same thing. You're trying to solve a problem. And if you're solving the right problem to begin with, and if it's worthy enough for a market, then that's kind of like an entrepreneurship itself, whether you take it to market or not. There's other forms. You can have an IP to a university licensing it out, or simply leaving it out in a publication, and somebody will eventually take it to market. That's, to me, it's very similar. It's just the entrepreneurship has one extra bit of commercializing that, and that's a huge thing, right? You see a lot of great work being published every year in different journals. People do really incredible things, but nobody takes them to market, so that's all these problems in front of it that you got to solve, and you have to be crazy enough or be willing to take the headache, in other words, to go through. So, but in terms of researchers, what advice I can give them, I think, I don't think I'm still at that position to give advice, but I think everything is, the biggest trouble everyone has is too much of generalization. So people go around hey, you have to work hard, right? Okay, between if you're in bed and you have to work hard, there's a difference, but what does working hard mean? What does it mean, right? Everything is in context of what you're doing. In fact, in many cases, everything needs to be specific, and I think that's where the right advisors, the right mentors will give you a lot of input throughout, because then you're talking about your problems and everything is specific, and having a little bit of time of those experts who have done it can tell you, fine-tune your way out of the problem. Anyway, so to me, that's the biggest bit.
And I think that actually comes back to something you were saying earlier as well about really, again, the need to build that strong team around yourself, again, whether it's a formal team, an informal team, to make sure that you're tapping into knowledge and wisdom that other people have as well. Okay, final question for you here, I think. Tell me a little bit about how this has changed you.
Personally?
Yeah.
So a lot. Changed by heaps. So I don't know. I don't think I can be ever the person I was before.
Yeah, pretty transformative.
Yeah. I mean, I think every day you turn out to be a lot more thinking about, first of all, more thinking of problem solving and different tasks. Now, this can go on forever and ever. You somebody talking in your head, you're seeing, I don't know, there's something wrong in the wall. Why is not somebody fixing this? Or and so on. It never stops. Like it always talks in your head, right?
Yeah.
There's second thoughts you have. But yeah, in general, I think it does make a huge personal growth or personal development sort of. Yeah, it like helps you grow a lot because then you're doing things that you were not expecting to do, and you're doing things in much shorter time span. So what you were normally would achieve outside, maybe if you were taking an ordinary route, you can achieve it with a fraction of that time. So I think that's been the biggest thing for me. And it's very fun every day, right? It doesn't get boring. It gets annoying, but it doesn't get boring, if that makes sense.
That makes complete sense. So I just want to congratulate you again on all the success. I think it's so exciting, and it just really seems to me, again, that this is proof that, you know, obviously we're facing this increasingly challenging century in a lot of ways. I know you obviously know the stats better than I do about the challenges that that agricultural meat production can contribute to sustainable outcomes, and so to be able to start developing alternative solutions is just so compelling. And again, PhD, co-founder, CEO, Accelerating Commercialization Grant. Really, really well done. Congratulations.
Thanks.
So this is where we actually now get, though, to the really juicy parts.
Okay.
And for all of you watching at home, sadly, this is where we leave you. However, you are welcome to come and join us every Friday here at UTS Startups at Central. We're at the corner of Broadway and Harris Street, the busiest street corner in Sydney. Every Friday afternoon, doors open at 3:30. You too could be here for the good bits. But thank you so much, and
Thanks
yeah,
for
we'll
having me.
continue the conversation here shortly.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure.